Taiwan's third biggest city braces for Super Typhoon Krathon to make landfall. Protesters march in London, calling for Taiwan's inclusion in the United Nations.
With the National Day just around the corner, we take a look at how the ceremonial ushers prepare for the big day.
Plus, Taiwan denounces Chinese President Xi Jinping's claims that Taiwan is a sacred part of China. Good evening. Welcome to TaiwanPlus News. I'm Joyce Tseng. Taiwan is bracing for impact as Super Typhoon Krathon approaches from the southwest. President Xi Jinping is urging citizens to stay alert and avoid traveling to the mountains. Krathon has been growing in strength as it makes a rare swing towards Taiwan's west coast, where 90% of the country's population lives. On Taiwan's mountainous east coast, where the outer edge of the typhoon first swung past on Monday, heavy rains caused mudslides and blocked roads. Two major airports there have grounded all planes. Outbound trains from the region have also been stopped. The storm is expected to make landfall on Wednesday morning and cut across the island to the northeast, bringing with it potentially deadly winds and rain. Now, reporter Rick Lauert is live for us down in Kaohsiung, where the storm is expected to strike first. Rick, how's it looking there?
Well, it had been the calm before the storm here in Kaohsiung today. Light wind, light rain, but the weather is now deteriorating and the waves here in Kaohsiung harbour, they're picking up. This city of more than 2 million people, of course, bracing for what could become the storm of a generation, and there are concerns that waves like these could turn into a storm surge, causing widespread flooding. Residents here doing what they can to protect their homes, their property from that flooding. They're putting out sandbags, barricading doors and windows. Well, the government has prepared dozens of shelters for people if they have to leave their home. Officials tell me there are enough space for 30,000 people. Meanwhile, outside of the city in mountainous areas prone to flooding and landslides, evacuations have already begun. This 82-year-old retired farmer has had an uncomfortable night's sleep here on the floor of her local community centre. She was reluctant to leave her home, forced to evacuate as Super Typhoon Krathon barrels towards her home in the mountains of southwest Taiwan.
很多人可以聊天，不会在家里怕，干脆来这里和大家在一起。
The Super Typhoon is expected to bring intense wind and rain to this area over the next few days. This community centre has been turned into a temporary refuge for those seeking shelter from Typhoon Krathon. About 20 people spent the night here where they're given food and a place to rest. That's because there's risks of floods and landslides in the region which could knock out roads, leaving people stranded and damaging homes and property. More than 1,000 people have been evacuated in this county alone. Across the country, Taiwan has mobilised more than 40,000 troops to aid in evacuation and rescue efforts.
敬请大家能够配合。第一个就是我们一定要秉持救灾不如防灾，防灾不如避灾的精神。事先在台风还没有真正进来之前。
Krathon has been growing in strength as it makes a rare swing around towards Taiwan's west coast. The storm is expected to make landfall on Wednesday. Already, schools and offices in some parts of the country are closed, flights are cancelled, and the major East Coast rail line halted. And out at sea, the country's Coast Guard lifted sailors to safety after their ship took on water. As Krathon edges towards Taiwan, residents of Kaohsiung, Taiwan's third largest city and home to more than 2 million people, are bracing for a storm surge, the city distributing a record number of sandbags.
我们家里都有准备那个粮食啊，也有手电筒，那些都有准备，希望不要断电。
Taiwan is no stranger to disasters like typhoons, but a storm of this size hasn't directly hit the south in decades. As the wind picks up and the rain intensifies, residents here face an uneasy night, hoping that their preparations will prove enough come morning. The typhoon is still some 200 kilometers off this coast, and it hasn't moved much in the last few hours, but it still packs a punch. It's still a very strong typhoon, and it's projected to hit Taiwan in urban areas like this one.
Thank you for those updates, Rick. That was our reporter, Rick Lowert, following the progress of the storm for us in Kaohsiung. Taiwan's Coast Guard has rescued all 19 crew members from a cargo ship in danger of sinking off the country's southeast coast. The crew on board the Barbados-registered vessel sent out an SOS message on Tuesday morning after their ship took on water in rough seas caused by Super Typhoon Krathon. All members have been taken ashore for medical treatment. Eastern Taiwan is also heavily affected by Super Typhoon Krathon, with rail services suspended in Taitung and Hualien counties. Heavy rain and landslides caused partial closures of rail services on Monday. Transportation officials also closed at least 15 bridges and sections of roads. Flights in and out of local airports have also been canceled. Officials in Hualien and Taitung are urging people to stay home and brace for more rain and wind, canceling classes and all non-essential work. Preparations are in full swing for Taiwan's National Day next week. Our reporter Sandy Chi went to a school in Taipei to see how one group of specially picked students have been training for the big day.
Chins up, smiles on, and ready to greet local and international guests in a variety of languages. These are the 22 students who have been handpicked to serve as ushers for Taiwan's National Day on October 10th. After undergoing a rigorous audition and selection process, they have been preparing for this day since August. To become a National Day usher is no easy task. Their training requires to learn how to walk, talk, and present themselves in the most appropriate manner. So can you tell me, what was the most challenging part of the training?
So throughout the past 3 months of the practice, I would say the hardest part is to work on our public speaking skills and also oral conversation, because in our daily life we don't got this many of chances to practice our oral conversation skill.
The usher's job is more than just talking with guests and showing them to their seats. These students also underwent training to deal with emergency situations, including earthquakes.
我们礼宾人都会第一时间下去安抚现场的贵宾，也会有一位礼宾人去询问管制官是否要进行疏散。那如果有需要进行疏散的话，我们也会以最快的速度引导贵宾至凯达格兰大道进行避难。
立即疏散，请各位贵宾前往凯达格兰大道进行疏散。请各位贵宾立即前往凯达格兰大道进行疏散。
Besides training, the usher's appearance is also very important, and that's all down to their uniform. The creator of this year's outfit is designer Liao Jialing, who is known as the Queen of Uniforms in Taiwan.
是以红色比较喜庆的颜色为主体，然后搭配了灰色还有宝蓝色。那首先在这个基底是以改良式的旗袍为基础。 可是呢，领子我就设计的比较现代、比较利落的感觉。
Now, as prepared as they can be, this year's squad of specially selected ushers will be hoping for a smooth, safe, and welcoming National Day. Klein Wong and Sandy Chi for TaiwanPlus.
China is celebrating its 75th founding anniversary as the People's Republic of China, hosting grand ceremonies in Beijing. On the eve of the celebrations, Chinese President Xi Jinping made a speech where he called Taiwan a sacred part of the country, a message Taiwan has denounced. A flag-raising ceremony in Beijing's Tiananmen Square. This, where a public uprising was once brutally crushed, is the focal point for the pomp and ceremony for the 75th anniversary of the Communist People's Republic of China, or PRC. In an address on the eve of the celebrations, Chinese President Xi Jinping said that though the path ahead will see challenges, nothing can stop China's progress, which includes his ambition to take control of self-ruled democratic Taiwan.
台湾是中国的神圣领土，两岸人民血脉相连，血浓于水。
It's a claim repeatedly rejected by Taiwan. The Mainland Affairs Council, Taiwan's main body handling matters with China, quickly denounced Xi Jinping's comments, issuing a written statement, here translated, reminding the Chinese president that Taiwan has never been a part of the PRC, calling this an objective fact, and that Beijing's One China principle has long been rejected by most Taiwanese people. The council also referred to Taiwanese President Ching-te's inauguration speech in May, where he urged China to face the reality of the Republic of China's existence, Taiwan's official name, and to treat Taiwan as equals.
我也要呼吁中国停止对台湾文攻武吓，一起和台湾承担全球的责任，致力于维持台海及区域的和平稳定。
China's Xi clearly seeing things differently, grouping Taiwan with Hong Kong and Macau in his speech, claiming them all under one unified Chinese nation. This rhetoric of a greater China coming at a time of increasing internal pressure. With its economy in decline, Beijing has had to announce a historic stimulus package hoping to boost growth. While on the military front, it's exerted its dominance through a recent rare test launch of an intercontinental ballistic missile into international waters. China's strength and grandeur on show here too, as it is in similar ceremonies in Hong Kong and Macau. All this to remind its people and those outside that modern China is a force to be reckoned with. Dolphin Chen and Joyce Tseng for TaiwanPlus. For more on China's National Day, Louise Watt spoke to Steve Vines, an author and former journalist in Hong Kong.
75 years is a big anniversary for China, the biggest since its 50th in 1999. How has the atmosphere changed since that time?
I'd say it's changed really considerably. First of all, China has become a country which has, in a sense, both advanced into the world and retreated from the world. What do I mean by that? In the period before, China was opening up to the rest of the world. It was becoming a big economic power. It was playing perhaps less of a diplomatic role, but a very important role, at least economically. Now what's happened is China is playing a much bigger diplomatic role, and because of the aggressiveness of its diplomacy, because of the aggressive nature of, in fact, of even its diplomats, China is becoming a much more polarizing place, and a lot of the goodwill that was shown towards the PRC has dissipated. Internally, of course, China has become a much more authoritarian government. I mean, people always thought that under the Chinese Communist Party it would be authoritarian, but under Xi Jinping, who assumed power in 2012, the clock has been turned back and it is much more repressive than it was in the earlier period.
Given Xi's governance, what might we expect from the coming 25 years?
That's always a really hard question, because 25 years, A, is a long time, and B, the future is always unknown. But I think the direction of travel is very clear. China is very keen to assert its prominence. I don't think globally in the way that some people imagine. I think it's mainly concerned with the wider East Asia region. And of course, there's always the threat that it may do something really violent, which would be the invasion of Taiwan, which will be a game changer in every possible way. Internally, I think China is now facing very profound pressures. The economy is no longer as strong as it was. The possibility of strains emerging within the Chinese community are much greater. Massive youth unemployment, massive problems with housing and things like that. So that, you know, this is going to be a very difficult period. China looks very strong, and in some ways it is very strong, but it faces these very challenging problems.
That was Steve Vines, an author and former journalist in Hong Kong. Now, ahead of China's National Day, so-called red collectors gathered in Beijing to display memorabilia from the era of Chairman Mao. These collectors consider themselves to be preserving an important part of the country's history. Cadence Quaranta reports.
These are statues of Mao Zedong, the leader of the Chinese Communist Party who founded the People's Republic of China in 1949. Chairman Mao is a critical figure in China's history, but he also has a complex legacy. He was chiefly responsible for the man-made disasters of the Great Leap Forward and the Cultural Revolution, which caused the deaths of tens of millions of people. But still, Feng Gang, a former soldier, chooses to display these statues of Mao in his home. He collects them, along with other memorabilia from the Mao era, known as red relics.
基本上就是这个全部的时间和精力，全都用在这个红色收藏上面，跑在全国各地，有了年休假，包括这个节假日，我没有时间去陪家人，这个走东串西，这个北上南下，在各个地方去找藏友收藏这个红色收藏品。
Feng is just one of many so-called red collectors in China, hunting for items made between the 1920s and 1970s, a period that ranges from the founding of the Communist Party to Mao's death. Such collectors often have personal connections to the Mao era and believe deeply in socialist values in the Communist Party. And in rapidly changing China, they see their work as preserving an important part of history.
这个搞红色收藏，不是像其他古玩收藏，因为红色收藏这一片是它高于古玩收藏。为什么呢？它其中有一项呢叫这个教育功能，叫教化社会的功能。所以搞红色收藏的人啊，基本上都很热爱自己的祖国，热爱我们中国共产党，热爱我们社会主义，热爱我们的这个家园。
In recent years, China has seen a wave of nostalgia for the Mao era, as its current leader, Xi Jinping, has ramped up nationalist education, aiming to deepen patriotism and love for the party.
We often think, perhaps outside of China, that the Mao era, that the revolution is just something in the past, it's just history. But these legacies really continue to exist into the present in China today, and they really have importance for a lot of the individuals. So a lot of the individuals who are part of the field of red collecting, they have personal, often family connections to the revolution. They have a deep love and respect for Chairman Mao, for the Communist Party.
And this love was on display at a large antiques market in Beijing last month. Ahead of China's National Day on October 1st, hundreds of red collectors showed off their memorabilia as part of a special 4-day event, including Feng, who drove 7.5 hours to be there. It's been nearly 50 years since the death of the man who was called the Great Helmsman. But these artifacts, and the people who collect them, show that Mao's life and legacy remain finely woven into the fabric of the nation. Howard Chang and Cadence Quaranta for TaiwanPlus.
Protesters marched in London over the weekend to support Taiwan's inclusion in the United Nations. The demonstration drew attention from passers-by and included participants from the Hong Kong, Uyghur, Tibetan, and Chinese communities. They also protested China's interpretation of UN Resolution 2758, which led to Taiwan's 1971 expulsion from the global body.
中国共产党恶意曲解2758号释字，联合国的2758号释字，然后长期压迫台湾在国际上的地位，然后我们需要号召台湾人站出来，然后让英国国会也重视这个议题。
The protest came on the closing day of the UN General Assembly in New York. Israel has announced what it is calling a limited ground invasion into southern Lebanon. Israeli tanks and troops have crossed the country's northern border, while airstrikes continue to pound the Lebanese capital, Beirut. Rosie Greninger reports.
Explosions along the border between Israel and Lebanon, as Israeli forces begin a ground incursion into the neighbouring country. For days, Israel had been warning of this next phase of its war against Lebanese militant group Hezbollah, with an aim to remove the threat to its northern border. Israelis living in the border towns were evacuated over the past 11 months of conflict.
וזה יהווה גורם משמעותי בשינוי המצב הביטחוני ויאפשר לנו להשלים את החלק החשוב של החזרת התושבים לבתיהם.
The Israeli military characterized this ground raid into Lebanon as limited in scope, saying there will be no long-term occupation, but they declined to specify the duration of their operation or how deep troops would venture into the country. US officials say they've been informed about the mission, but continued to push for a diplomatic solution, with US President Joe Biden shifting away from his defense of Israel's actions and calling for an immediate ceasefire.
I'm more aware than you might know, and I'm comfortable with them stopping. We should have a ceasefire now.
The ground operation marks a new phase of fighting that threatens to unleash further devastation across Lebanon, which has been thrown into a humanitarian crisis over a week of intense Israeli airstrikes. More than 1,000 people have been killed and more than 1 million displaced. Israel says the civilian casualties are a result of Hezbollah hiding their ranks and weapons in populated areas. The bombardment specifically targeted the militants' communication capabilities and command structure, killing the group's longtime leader, Hassan Nasrallah. But ahead of the cross-border invasion, Hezbollah made clear in their first speech since the death of their leader that they would continue the fight against Israel.
سنواجه أي احتمال ومستعدون إذا قرر الإسرائيلي أن يدخل بريا فالقوات قوات المقاومة جاهزة للالتحام البري.
Israel's escalation of the conflict in Lebanon is increasing international fears of a wider war in the Middle East, with the potential to draw in Hezbollah ally Iran. Iran said it wanted to avoid a war, but avowed the assassination of Hezbollah's leader would not go unanswered.
برای جنایاتی که در حق ملت ایران، در حق محور مقاومت و در حق اتباع شهروندان و نظامیان ایرانی مرتکب شده، بدون توبیخ و بدون در واقع تنبیه حتما عرض به خدمت شما که
There are fears this ground invasion into Lebanon could cross a red line for Iran. In a video released by his office, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu addressed the Iranian people directly, laying the responsibility for a further escalation on their leaders.
There is nowhere in the Middle East Israel cannot reach. There is nowhere we will not go to protect our people and protect our country. With every passing moment, the regime is bringing you, the noble Persian people, closer to the abyss.
Once again, dismissing international calls for calm, with more threats that could draw other players in the region into the conflict, increasing the risk of an all-out regional war. Dolphine Chen and Rosie Greninger for TaiwanPlus.
The once thriving waters off Taiwan's Penghu Islands are growing barren due to the effects of undersea excavation projects, but a community project to attract marine life back into the shallows is taking root, Reese Ayers reports.
As the waters off Taiwan's outlying Penghu Islands recede with the tide, a team of volunteers ventures out into the exposed sea mud. Wielding handfuls of seagrass shoots, they're ready to restore life to these dying shallows.
这样就是一株一株的一个海草。那我们等一下种的时候啊，就是这样子一株一株的这样子把它插下去。
Gungzi village was once a hotspot for seagrass, an often overlooked component of marine ecosystems that offers food and shelter to a wide range of sea life. But long-term excavation projects in the channels around Penghu have buried much of the seagrass under displaced sand.
水的深度跟以前比起来，差不多被埋了到2公尺以上，所以里面的生物啦，包括海草啦什么的，都埋掉了，那没办法生长。
Enlisting the help of the local community, the Penghu Marine Biology Centre has made it their goal to restore these intertidal zones to their former glory. Several parts of the Penghu island chain were designated seagrass protection zones back in 2022. But farming seagrass is no easy task.
航道那个你因为水流的关系，每天那个沙滩会跑来跑去，你海草就没办法附着在上面。
Certain shellfish harvesting tools have been prohibited to help protect the budding seagrass shoots, which, if allowed to thrive, would bring more than plant life back to these waters.
在这样的环境去种海草的话，它可以提供很多的一些幼苗，能够在这边栖息，然后这边成长觅食，那最后就会变成是我们渔民朋友的他们的一个渔获。
With the combined efforts of marine scientists and local volunteers, there's hope yet that these once thriving waters can again sustain an abundance of life. Fu Huaheng and Rees for TaiwanPlus.
Thank you for watching TaiwanPlus News. You can visit the TaiwanPlus website or follow our social media for more of our stories. Finally, we sign off today with more live footage of the weather across Taiwan as Super Typhoon Krathon moves closer. I'm Joyce. Take care and stay safe.